Ghost of Tsushima は封建時代の日本を舞台にした仕掛け的に素晴らしい侍の僕にあなたを連れて行きます。Alright, I'm joking. I'm not going to do the whole review in Japanese, don't worry. I've put in a few hours, gathered my thoughts, and I'm here to share the highs and lows, and some observations along the way. So yeah, let's get started. Alright, so first off, let's talk about what this game really does well. Everything is very clear, whether it's your location for your next objective, to what your abilities and weapons do. Speaking of the weather, the game has an interesting way to navigate the player using the wind, which I found very unique and creative. The main aspect of the game is the story. Normally I don't talk about it, but since this game leans heavily on the storytelling, I had to mention it. The game is based off a true story, that of course takes liberties.
The liberty. Stop! I'm taking far too much liberty with the liberty taking.
And makes it an engaging tale of a samurai who must abandon his traditional samurai codes to adapt to guerrilla tactics, in a desperate fight to repel Mongol invaders and protect his homeland. Through the game, you learn about Jin through flashbacks, which not only serve as a training mode, but a nice way to stay connected to the character throughout the story. The size of the map is impressive. Even in just the first area, there's always something happening, random events, battles, or scenic moments that make exploring on horseback genuinely fun. Of course, fast travel is included, which you'd expect in a game like this. The game is gorgeous to look at. I didn't play the game in full Ultra 8K high definition Blu-ray quality, but since I'm playing this on a 5-year-old computer, it was still very pretty. The style and the camera angles the director chose really made it feel truly cinematic. The animations are fluid and fun to watch, including the brutality Jin brings to his enemies. The game has a parry system much like Sekiro, and coming fresh-ish off Sekiro, it feels very familiar. Basically, you can block, parry, or perfect parry. With a perfect parry, you stagger the enemy, which lets you get in a few hits. I also have to mention that I never came across any major glitches, nothing that broke the game, and in fact the times it looked like the few times it did glitch felt like it was actually in favor to me to make the game even more fluid. Even some unexpected things worked the way I wanted to when I had doubts it even would have in the first place. The traversal feels very reminiscent to Assassin's Creed, but without so much parkour. Sounds like I'm stepping into cons. Am I missing anything? Now, as much as I enjoyed it, there are of course some downsides. Cutscenes are unskippable. Sure, the voice acting in Japanese and English was really well done with a lot of heart put into it, but still sometimes I get the gist and I just want to carry on, especially just having the option to do it. So further research found that I actually could skip the cutscenes, but only a New Game Plus. And to me that feels like an oversight. And it's not even that I necessarily skip what they're saying. Sometimes I skip the animations and the voice acting because I don't want to sit through it every single time. Of course, I know that there are people that do like to listen to the whole thing, I'm just not one of those people. And for being a third-person game, the lack of camera control from switching left to right seems a bit odd. You can adjust it when aiming with your bow, but still sometimes I feel like I'm having too much space on one side to the right. Yes, in a cinematic fashion, this would be the rule of thirds, but when it comes to gameplay, I feel like I'm just really restricted on the left side of looking at things. Besides that, I didn't have any real issues with the camera. It never got in the way, even in tight or chaotic moments. The Kurosawa mode. So in this mode, it turns things black and white. It's supposed to give you that feel of that classic style, Kurosawa movies, obviously. Cool in theory, but when actually playing the game, not so much. It not only changes the visuals, but also the audio. Not to mention that since the attacks glow bright red when you're about to get hit, it's just black and white in this mode. It just makes things extra harder. But even for a challenge, the audio just ruins the experience, so I had to change it back. There's lots of similarities to Assassin's Creed. For example, you have the shrines. Basically, if you've played any Assassin's Creed game where you climb to the top of a really tall structure, you get that nice view of the landscapes, and some of the fog of war disappears from the map. But in this game, it gives you a charm, and charms are used to essentially give your weapon unique buffs, which could add a lot of flair to the game. In Assassin's Creed, you would just jump and land in some hay, but in this game, you just go a little backwards and the game transports you to the bottom of the mountain you just climbed. Like I mentioned, the voice acting is solid, the Japanese original has that authentic flair, but the English dub isn't bad either.
What happened to you?
There's a merchant working with the Mongols. They gave him an iron mark.
何があった？猛虎と手を組む悪友がいます。そいつが持ってる通行証を。
I started with Japanese audio, but during combat, reading subtitles while dodging and timing attacks became tricky, so I switched to English. Now the controls. Mostly good, but there was an odd choice when it came to where do I go button. There is no minimap in the corner of the screen, since the game wants you to be as cinematic as possible, except the button layout is just so weird I still can't get over it, since you do have to push it many times throughout the game. On a basic modern controller, if I were to give you 20 tries to guess how to do it, you still wouldn't guess what that button is. Because it's not a button, it's a series of buttons. So let me show you here. Okay, so the D-pad is 4 directions, yes, they all do something. This is how you do it. You have to hold right on the D-pad to trigger gestures, and then flick up on the right joystick. But a button that you need to use like that should be more easily accessible. I just found myself pushing the G button on my keyboard instead, as I found it much less interrupting. And yeah, that's lucky of me, I'm playing with the keyboard in front of my hands. It's not a deal breaker, but just very annoying, and I had to point it out in this review. Besides that, I felt the controls were pretty intuitive. Now, I'm sure I can change the controls, but this is the default controls, so...
You had to bring that up, didn't you?
When it comes to upgrading gear, it's pretty much standard stuff. You gather materials, visit a blacksmith, and improve your equipment. It reminds me a lot of God of War or any open world game how upgrades are tied to exploration and crafting. Oh, and a small but cool detail, you can ride the horses in the villages. Most games force you to dismount, but here, you're free to trot around as you please. One thing that surprised me is the lack of new weapons. In my first few hours, I didn't find a single new sword. And as it turns out, you only upgrade the ones you start with. Initially, I thought it was a bit lame, but as I played more, I got used to the simplicity. It feels like the game is more about creating a cinematic experience than a deep RPG. I do have to be open here that I haven't unlocked any of the stances, however just because of the repetitive nature of the game, and maybe I'm just open worlded out, I didn't feel the drive or the incentive to beat the game or let alone unlock the first stance. Just to cover all the bases here, you can switch to stances like the stone, water, wind, and moon, effectively countering various enemy types. It's impressive how many diverse and unique abilities you can eventually unlock, ranging from ghost weapons to special combat maneuvers, which adds depth and variety to gameplay for both combat and stealth. However, most of these abilities are locked behind story progression, making the early game feel like a standard stealth action adventure experience. The skill tree doesn't allow you to preview future abilities without unlocking them in order, which can be frustrating for players who like to plan their builds. Although you can still see the abilities in your menu screen, but when it matters for actually selecting what you want, I would have to go online, look back and forth, and that whole thing just detracts from the experience of strategizing within the game. I did find that the game provides enough skill points to unlock every ability, which is great for completionists, but limits the sense of personalized builds. This approach, contrasting with older or more tactical games like System Shock 2, Mass Effect, and the Deus Ex games, where limited skill points force players to make tough choices, shaping their unique playstyles. While modern games like Spider-Man, Far Cry 5, and of course Ghost of Tsushima aim for accessibility, some players might miss the challenge and satisfaction of crafting a distinct character build. Call it old-fashioned, but the joy of thoughtful planning and careful investment feels a bit lost here. I guess that's why I'm more of a roguelike player in that sense as well. Just a quick side note, I wonder if anyone else has noted how much people sweat in this game. It started becoming a little running gag to see how often characters sweat. And this game has an interesting way of dealing with death. Some games make it so you start a checkpoint again, or even start a level again. Some make you start from some kind of fire pit, and other games will make you start the whole game all over again. And others will just make you want to refund the game back to the store. But Ghost of Tsushima wants to be different, and make death not only not a punishment, but sometimes a way to solve a problem. So when I came across a bunch of mercs or just a lone gang, I'd want to fight them because they're Mongols, and the game teaches me that all Mongols are bad. So I want to fight them. Sometimes they might kick my ass, but instead of finding the group and fighting them again, they just disappear. I know, that's not new, but sometimes I fight a group, and I die, and all of a sudden I'll appear right in front of the objective that was like 100 meters away. Throughout the video, you might see a standoff opportunity appropriately named the standoff, and this is a neat little mechanic where you challenge an enemy, and you watch the prompt, and let go at the right time. Now, I'm not an expert, but the wind is the clue. Sometimes it felt like it worked at different times though, like I could let go a little earlier than others. As usual, it adds a cinematic flair, as even though you're in the same area, the challenge can differ from enemy types to camera angles. Being cinematic, it does get a little old quick, but it's not a bad thing, as it stands as a unique mechanic in the game, and it's short enough. But you will be seeing it a lot, as it greatly benefits you since it's easy to do and becomes a one-hit kill. I realized that I didn't even mention the fox yet, and there's not really too much to it besides being a guide to various rewards, and they are cute to pet.
Good job, Kitsune.
Well, this was my quick look and experience playing the game. In short, Ghost of Tsushima blends beautiful visuals, immersive storytelling, and accessible gameplay. While it doesn't dive deep into complexity with systems or combat, it's an incredibly cinematic experience. So if you're into samurai stories or just want a stunning world to explore, this game would be for you. It wasn't for me. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts and experiences with the game in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, bye.